Mic check. 1 2 1 2 1 2. What is up, my beautiful people? It's your girl Rosabelle, and welcome. For those of you who are new here, hit that subscribe button, the follow, the like, the share, wherever you see this, wherever you're listening to this. And welcome. Welcome to my mind. Welcome to my feelings. Welcome to my space. I'm in my element. I'm in a space where I like to kick my shoes off and put my feet up, put my robe on, take my pants off, because pants are dumb, and just kick back, relax. I want to unwind from my day, unfold, and unplug.
Happy Monday, love.
Happy Monday. Welcome back, everybody, to Rosabelle Unplugged, honey. This is the space where we learn new things and we grow our mind and we really talk about taking care of self.
Yeah. Happy Mental Health Month.
Exactly. Happy Mental Health Month. How y'all freeing your mind this month? Or how are you working on freeing your mind this month?
I feel like that's a broad question.
It is, but it's a broad question, but also freeing your mind. It could be a lot of things that you could free out of your mind. It could be small. It could be big. But how are you freeing your mind this month? How are you taking care of you? Therapy is a way to start freeing your mind.
It's a way.
There's a lot of ways, but what are you doing? For me, I'm outside.
Yeah, we've been outside a
lot. Sunshine definitely makes a difference in a place. So that's what I'm doing. But I hope that you guys are out there taking care of yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah. What are we talking about today?
Today we are... I forgot. Tell me so I can say it.
We're talking about coping skills.
Oh, duh. That's why I started it off this way. Today we are talking about coping skills and things that can help us deal with hard times.
That's right.
Hard times. Whatever obstacle we think we may be going through, as we're working on freeing our mind, maybe we can learn some skills on how to handle some of what we're feeling.
Okay, so if you were to go to therapy, one of the first things that your therapist will ask you is, what do you use to cope? How do you cope? How would you answer that question with no knowledge yet of what the answer they're expecting?
Well, you gotta answer it honestly. Like, what do you do to cope?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I work out. Sometimes I go outside.
Okay.
Sometimes I yell.
That's all. It all works.
It's part of coping. It's part of letting that emotion out, whether it's positive or a negative thing.
Okay.
It's a different story, but yep.
Okay. So coping skills, when we talk about them, we're talking about kind of a few different things. And this is the way that I teach them, but I'm sure other people in mental health would maybe talk about them differently. Mm-hmm. So when I teach coping skills, I tell people that it's anything you do to get through a hard time that's maybe not changeable. So like a good example of that would be, like, let's say a loved one died. You can't change that. You can't bring them back. So a coping skill would be, what do you do to get through that time of mourning? You know what I mean? Or let's say you lost your job, right? You can't get your job back necessarily. Stuff like that. You can't do anything to fix the problem. So what do you do to deal with it? And obviously for my people, a lot of times the thing that they're coping with is jail, or going to prison or something like that. Like, there's absolutely nothing they can do to get out of jail. Mm-hmm. So what can we do to make jail as pleasurable, let's say, as possible? So when I teach coping skills, I teach them in two different ways. Okay. So I say active coping skills and inactive coping skills. And that's not like a technical term or anything. It's just kind of like how I like to categorize them, is so that they're easier to understand. Mm-hmm. So an inactive coping skill would be something that you do to distract from a problem, right? Okay. So if you are having the problem, let's say I'm going to go back to the example of the person dying, because everybody deals with this, right? Mm-hmm. Like I said, nothing you can do to bring them back, but there's also no benefit to you sitting there and wallowing in your sorrow constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's definitely good for you to be sorry or sad or feel whatever feelings you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's getting to a point where it's interrupting your daily life,
Mm-hmm.
like you can't get up and you can't eat, or aren't showering, or you're not, whatever, then you need to do something to take a break from that.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that, I would use what I call an inactive coping skill, a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're talking about when you said, like, working out, getting outside. Some really common ones I hear is like listening to music, reading a book, watching TV, listening to the radio.
Mm-hmm.
In my groups that I do, sometimes we have like a contest of, like, I'll split them in half and I'll be like, who can come up with the most coping skills, whatever. And a lot of them, I mean, there's lots of stuff that you can do even from in an institutionalized setting. So you can imagine being out, you have so many options, talking to a friend, going to a class, like going and hanging out with a family member, getting on the phone, playing games is always a big one, video games, hanging out with kids is a big one always. Music, whatever people's hobbies are. A lot of people like to meditate, get in the garden, stuff like that, right? So those are things that you use to distract. I'm having a hard time. This hard time is really like taking over me mentally. I just need a break from it. We all deserve a break from our own mental health. But the fact of the matter is no one can take your brain from you. You would die. So sometimes you need a break. And it's totally okay to take that break. And that's how we do it, is with distraction. Right? And then on the other hand is what I like to call active coping skills. So these are things that, like, I teach my clients so that they can better maintain their mental health or better observe their symptoms so that they know what's going on. You know what I mean? So that they can monitor and take care of themselves the best that they can. So, I mean, there's tons of things that you can do and ways that you can maintain your mental health. But at least for the purposes of this podcast, I wrote down five that I think are, like, very common, easy to teach people. They can do it on their own. They don't need a professional next to them all the time.
Okay.
But it would be helpful if you find yourself needing to do this often, to get a professional involved to make sure that, one, you're doing it all the time and you're doing it correctly, but also so that you can consult with somebody else. You're not by yourself in this. So what I've started with in my list, number one, is mood records.
Okay.
So when I do my clients...
I do that on my phone every day.
Okay. When I do my clients' mood records with them, I typically tell them, if you feel like you're going through a hard time right now, maybe like a few times a day, however you want to measure that. A lot of my guys do it like, before and after lunch or at, at time when we get out, or, when a certain song comes on the radio, or med pass, or something like that. But my outpatient clients probably are more likely to be like, okay, I'm going to do it like 8, 10, noon, 2, and 7 p.m. Something like that, right?
Yep.
And at that time, you would make it kind of like a grid. You would say, okay, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I was feeling on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the saddest I've ever felt and 10 being the happiest I've ever felt.
Yep.
I was feeling an 8. And then just like a brief synopsis of what's going on. So I was feeling an 8. I'm on my way to work. Sunshine and feels good. Okay?
Yep.
Noon, I'm feeling, let's say, like a 6. Starting to get kind of sleepy and cranky. I'm hungry. Whatever. Okay, and then let's say 2 p.m. It's the end of the day. I'm excited to get out of here. I'm a 7.
Let the waltz on out of this place.
Right. 7 p.m. I'm feeling a little cranky. I'm ready for bed. Let's say I'm a 4. Okay?
Ooh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, 7 in the red.
Right. And then you're going to go through, let's say, a week to 2 weeks of doing this. And then after you've done it, see if you notice any patterns.
Right.
Okay?
For sure, yep.
So let's say, like, okay, I noticed that a lot of times in the morning, I'm not feeling the greatest. Maybe I want to start introducing something in the morning. Like maybe I want to wake up a little bit earlier and do some stretching, or, take an extra 10 minutes to drink my coffee in the morning, or, something like that, or maybe you notice when you're around a certain person on your little notes, your mood goes down a little bit. What's that about? That person's always like negative.
Negative energy.
Right. Stuff like that. So I recommend that people keep that at least for like 2 weeks before they start looking for patterns, because it usually takes a while to kind of develop those.
For sure.
And if you can, the more frequent you do it and the more detail you put in,
the better.
Yeah, the easier it's going to be to see those patterns. Because if you think about your day, think about like yesterday. Do you really remember every emotion you were feeling all through the day?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so if you document it, it'll be a lot easier to kind of follow that. So that's a really great way to start helping yourself. And then I put on here free writing, and free writing kind of goes with the mood records. When I have my clients do free writing, I mean, it can literally be, I set a stopwatch for 30 seconds, and you just write literally everything that pops into your mind in those 30 seconds. It does not need to be complete sentences. It does not need to make sense. It does not need to be on the lines. It doesn't even need to be words. It could be pictures. It can be drawings. It can be literal scribbles. I've had clients write, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. This is stupid. This is dumb. Why am I doing this? And that's fine. Because the more that you practice it, the better that you get at it. And it kind of goes with the mood records, right? Because you're putting a little synopsis in about how you're feeling. But if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I'm a 5, I'm just kind of neutral, I don't really know what I'm feeling, then, okay, do you a little free write, and something will pop into your brain. Eventually, people do talk. And I always tell them, like, I'm going to put, let's say a minute on my stopwatch. You're going to write for a minute, but if you ain't wrote nothing of substance, I'm going to put another minute on that stopwatch.
Absolutely. Yeah, give you a little bit more time.
So that's something else that you can do. As far as coping skills goes, I'd say those two are where I start clients. Now, let's say I'm like coming back to talk to you for like the 3rd or 4th time or whatever. Then I might talk to you about gratitude journaling.
Okay.
I love gratitude journaling. Now, for my friends who are not in jail or prison, there are literally books and books and books that you can buy on Amazon, at the dollar store, all kinds of stuff.
So many. A lot of places are really promoting gratitude journaling.
Yeah. And so the whole point is that it teaches you, how to be grateful for things that you might otherwise not really acknowledge even. But journaling in general can be really good because it teaches you how you dealt with a problem, right? So I want you to imagine you and let's say you and a friend got into a fight. And after that fight's over, you go back to your journal and you write down all the reasons why you hate that bitch and you can't stand her and fuck that bitch and da-da-da-da-da. And then a month later, you go back and you read that. You probably do not feel that same way.
Nope, not at all.
You know what I mean? But what you do in that moment of when you hated her is important. Because that's a lot of times what we do when we are feeling very vulnerable, right? Like you hate her for some reason, right? She probably broke your trust. She probably took you, took advantage of you in some way or something like that. So that's when you feel the most vulnerable. What do you do when you're most vulnerable, right? And it's hard to truly reflect on that unless you know how you felt. And unfortunately, our brains are not that good at remembering that viscous memory.
Not at all.
So it kind of shows you over time how you've changed. A good way that I explain this with my clients is I'll say, let's say my client's like 30 years old. I'll say, think back 5 years ago when you were 25. What was the most important thing to you at 25? What was that one thing that you were like, oh, I got to do that every day, or I can't live without this, or a person in your life who you were like, talk to every single day, or something of that nature, right? And a lot of them will tell me like, oh, I really loved this pair of shoes, or I used to hang out with this girl a lot.
You trying to remember 2019.
Do you even know where that person is anymore?
I remember Art Basel 2019. There we go. That's one.
Do you even remember? Do you even have those things anymore? You know, think about what. No. So when you went to Art Basel, right? You obviously packed a bag of things that you thought were important to you. The clothes that you wore to Art Basel, you even got them?
Some of them I have. I can't fit most of them. So no, I don't have them anymore.
Not important anymore, you know? Things that you felt like at the moment you could not live without. You don't have them no more.
That's right.
You know, over time we change.
We do.
And that's totally fine. It's perfectly normal. That's how humans work. It's a good thing.
Our body changes all the time. So of course we're going to change.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's kind of how I express journaling, because the more detail that you get, the better you're going to understand past you. And the longer that you do it, the better you'll be able to go back and, like, examine how you felt then and maybe how that feeling has changed. You know what I mean? So I really, really encourage journaling with my clients. I feel like every time I say journaling, I see their eyes roll in the back of their head. And I'm like, please just like write a journal for like a couple of weeks. We will work on it. I will come back and we'll go over your journal.
So you mentioned like inactive coping skills?
Yeah.
And then the other ones are active coping skills?
Yep.
So what is the difference?
So the inactive ones are just distractions. That's all they are. Whatever you like to do to distract. These active ones are things that you're actually going to do to improve your mental health. There's stuff you're probably going to have to fit into your daily routine, stuff that you're probably going to have to learn and like kind of go with the flow with, because nobody does it the same. Everybody does it the same way.
Very different. Yep, you got to find the way that fits you.
Right.
It's not one shoe fits all. So
right.
For sure.
So there's going to be, you know, trials and tribulations. There's going to be days that you feel like you did a good job at it, days that you feel like you did a bad job at it. But that's okay. It's all part of the learning process. You know?
So do you feel like with like for instance with like me, like when we go outside and work out or meditation, is gratitude journaling, I feel like that's all part of processing. I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say. So like, I don't know, when I meditate, you know, you go through these affirmations, you know, you go through these statements, you feel your feelings. So at least me, I'm not going to say for everybody else, but when I meditate, it's a state of feeling whatever. You know, I let my thoughts come to my mind. I feel them. You know, sometimes I talk through them, but that's a state where I feel like I'm taking my time to feel those emotions. Even when I work out, they feel my workout, but it's, you know, it's just something that I'm working through in my mind. So is that inactive or active?
I mean, it could be both, right? It could be both. But I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter as long as it's something that you're doing to help yourself. You know what I mean? I think that it doesn't matter. This active and inactive thing, this is just what I use to kind of explain it to my clients.
Well, that's fine.
But then from there,
I was just wondering if it could be inactive.
It could be both. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This is just kind of how I teach my clients to start advocating for their own mental health.
That's good.
To start caring for themselves.
These are good steps.
Yeah. So the last thing that I wanted to kind of talk about was grounding. Grounding. Grounding is what you use to distract when you're in crisis.
Okay.
Right? So sometimes, and I always explain to my clients afterwards, but I think in the moment, they're kind of like, what is going on here?
Absolutely.
So let's say I go into a room and I'm with a client who's in crisis. So they're screaming, they're crying, they're freaking out for whatever reason. I'm sure it's a valid reason, but they're not able to communicate that to me in the moment, right? So what's the first thing that you think I do to a person that's freaking out?
Probably try to bring them back to focus.
Kinda, right?
I don't know what that looks like, but I feel like to bring them back to to bring them back to themselves, come back.
Yeah. So I would say, hi, my name's Samantha. I'm with Blank Agency. I got called up here because I heard you were, you know, having a moment. What's going on? And I'm going to let them vent and go.
Yep.
But if it gets to a point where it's starting to get dangerous, I might say something like, I'm really hearing that you're frustrated here. Can you tell me, what color is that chair over there?
Okay, yeah, bringing them back to focus, cooling them down.
Right, and they're just looking
bringing
at me
their heart
like,
rate back down.
What the hell? Could you tell me, when do you think the last time someone cleaned that window was? If you had to guess, how many inmates do you think are in this jail? Or, I might say, my eyes. Something like that. Or, I have a couple funky pairs of glasses. I might say, what color are my glasses today? Something of that nature.
You got some pretty cool glasses. What do my glasses look like today?
Yeah.
Actually, the cool ones.
Yeah. So, I do that stuff because I know it seems like a stupid question and it's unrelated to what the person is saying. But the point is because they're becoming emotionally charged. And when we're emotionally charged like that, we cannot clearly express how we feel. And so I need the person to calm down enough so that they can express to me what is so frustrating. And almost certainly I'm going to agree, oh yeah, that seems very frustrating. I can understand what's going on. I can understand why you would feel that way. What are we going to do about it right now? And from there we can take it. But if the person is so emotionally charged that they can't even have a conversation with me,
right,
we have to take a step back, and that's grounding. That's how I usually do it.
Okay.
A lot of other therapists like the 5-4-3-2-1 method.
Right.
And with that, you would use the 5 senses, right? You pair each sense with a number. And there is a specific order that most people use, but because I don't use it a lot, I don't know the order.
That's fair.
So they might say, like, name 5 things that you can see. And they would say, okay, if I was the client, I might say, okay, I see a bookshelf, I see some shoes, I see the floor, I see that curtain on the wall.
I love that.
Something like that. But that's not it. Like, you have to go into detail. So I might say, okay, tell me about that bookshelf. It's black. Okay, I need more. How many books do you think are on it? How old do you think it is? Do you think it's pretty sturdy? Do you think it's cold? Do you think it's warm? Do you think it's heavy? Do you think it's... I'm looking for all that stuff. And I'll keep telling, tell me more about it. Tell me more about it. Tell me more about it. I'll ask questions about it. Where do you think it was made? Who do you think built it? Stuff like that, all about a bookshelf. And I'll say, well, tell me about those shoes. Where do you think they got? What brand are those? Do you think they're pretty comfortable? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole point is the same thing. It's grounding. I'm bringing you back to earth. I'm getting you out of your head and into earth.
Okay.
So those are some things that I would do to try to help my client who's like a beginner in mental health. And those are some things that they can do on their own. But like I said, if you find, that you're doing these things a lot, or that you feel like maybe you're not doing them right, or maybe veering off too far, literally any therapist can do these kinds of things with you. So that's how I start, and that's kind of how I explain coping skills to people.
Okay.
This is how we start our mental health journey. Because a lot of times my clients are first-time mental health users. So it's their first time ever, working with mental health or knowing anything about mental health. But the truth is like we all have mental health.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And for some people it's, good, and for some people it's bad. And all mental health comes in, ebbs and flows, good and bad times.
Yeah.
So these are some tools that people can use when they are bad.
Okay.
And I hope that's a little bit helpful for, people who don't maybe go see mental health therapists.
Yeah.
But if you are in need of anybody, my first recommendation is always to call the number on the back of your insurance card.
Okay.
To get into counseling, because you don't want to have to pay for it or pay too much for it.
Yes, definitely check first.
Yes.
Always check. Any service, always check first.
Yeah. I recommend that you either ask your insurance company for an LSW, a licensed social worker, or an LPC, a licensed practicing counselor.
Okay.
Either one, I mean, would be good. Of course, I'm a social worker, so I'm biased.
That's fair. Touché.
The biggest difference between them, for people who don't know, is a licensed counselor went to school usually for psychology, counseling, something of that nature, and they're very much experts in like your personal mental health, your physical health, stuff like that, like how those things interact, how the brain works, that kind of stuff. Social workers are a little more holistic. So that means that, yes, they do, of course, care and have background in mental health and a little bit in like biology and how brains work and stuff like that. But they also care a lot more how the person functions in their environment. So they will care more about, like, you know, how are things going at work and at church and with your friends and with your family and your significant other and all, like, you as a community, not just you as an individual. So that's kind of the difference between them. You pick what you want to pick. Almost all mental health is covered if you have Medicaid, Medicare, or a combination of such. Private practice mental health usually costs. So, I mean, that does suck, but, you know, they figure once you got the money, you got the money.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, okay. Fair. Well, so, thank you.
If I were to ask you again, what do you do to cope? What would you say now?
I mean, I would still say the same thing. For me, it didn't change.
Okay.
What I used to cope, I still like use grounding, meditating, or other form of like working out, getting some sun, trying to be present within myself.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I think that we all have coping skills that we do or do not always recognize. You know what I mean? Like, I think that some people retreat within themselves. Some people retreat out within others and their loved ones and all of that, you know? I think
sometimes all you need is love.
Right. I think sometimes we don't even realize that we put ourselves in risky situations or behaviors that could maybe be self-injurious.
Yep.
You know, like I have a lot of clients who will say things like they like punch walls then when they're mad, or
and then you gotta pay for it. Then you might break your hand.
Right.
Don't be a me.
Things
I broke my hand.
Things that could potentially be dangerous, like you know, I use drugs when I'm upset, or I like to gamble, I like to shop too much, you know, things like that. Which, you know, all coping skills are coping skills. Yeah. I'm not gonna say to somebody who drinks, you know, 3 pints of liquor a day that's not a coping skill. It's still a coping skill. It's probably just not the best one that you could be choosing. Okay. You know? So a coping skill is a coping skill. That includes the bad stuff that you do. You know, if you say to me, oh, when I'm pissed off, I punch walls until my fists bleed, that's still a coping skill. It's not a good one. And what we would do is try to, you know,
get you some more positive.
Yeah, get you something else. But I mean, you are coping with a hard time. Yep. You didn't give up.
That's true. Nope, you didn't give up. You made it through and you saw another day.
Right. You know, every day can't be beautiful, but every day does pass.
It does.
You know, if you're having a bad day, it'll go away soon. Just use your coping skills.
Y'all hear that out there? Use your coping skills and never forget that you are worthy. You will always be worthy. Don't let anybody tell you that you ain't worthy, because you can do anything that you put your mind to. And that's why you gotta take care of it. I love y'all.
Love you, bye.